Rebecca Rogers. Welcome to my channel if you've never been here before, and if you have, you probably noticed things look a little bit different. As I've told you guys, I'm still trying to figure out what I like with long content, what I don't like, so let me know the feedback. But it's time for another weekly episode of Am I the Bad Apple? If you're one of our new friends, you are in for a treat because we have some doozies today. People send in submissions of situations where they don't know if they acted appropriately or not. They could be a good apple, a bad apple, or crab apple. We read their submissions and we judge them. So, without further ado, let's get started with this week's episode of Am I the Bad Apple? Apple number 1. Am I the bad apple for failing a student who doesn't speak English? I've got a handful of ESL and ELL kids in my otherwise English-speaking class. This means that English isn't their first language. Some of them are fluent in English while some are still learning, and some don't speak a single word of English. They're all taught the same material as my English native speaking students, except they're allowed to use electronic translators or have a person translate the work for them. Some even request Spanish versions of the handouts and notes, and I provide it. Now, on to the issue. We just turned in a final draft of an essay 2 days ago through the school website. I got to Jessica, an ELL student that uses her phone to translate notes and assignments, and saw her essay was perfect. None of my other students, whether they be ELLs, ESLs, or English native speakers, had essays nearly as polished. From my history of teaching and being a student myself before, I knew it was fishy. So I copy and pasted the essay into Google, and lo and behold, it's the first search result. Jessica plagiarized this entire paper. No quotation marks, no bibliographies, no works cited list, nothing. So, as school policy states, I gave Jessica an F. Jessica's academic counselor called me today, on a Saturday mind you, and chewed me out for trying to hold an immigrant back for reaching her full potential. She got the principal on a conference call after her ranting, and he told me I had to give Jessica a 50 because she didn't know any better? Bullcrap. I myself gave them tons of lessons on what is and isn't plagiarism, quoting and citing, etc., as well as made it clear that plagiarism is not tolerated here or in higher education. I'm not one for confrontation though, so I just called it a day and changed it to a 50. But am I the bad apple? I caught another student trying to plagiarize from SparkNotes on the rough draft and gave him a 0, but it's different because English isn't Jessica's native language? I just don't feel like that's fair. What do you guys think? Okay, there's a few things that I'm going to say that I think people aren't gonna like. I feel like there's this weird insinuation that when someone doesn't speak English, it means that they're, like, they speak to them and treat them as if they're unintelligent. Like, oh, they don't know better. They know better. Just because they don't speak English doesn't mean that they're dumb. That's a terrible mentality to have. Why don't they know better? If they're getting all of the assignments in their native language, why would they not know better? That makes absolutely no sense to me. But what I really think people aren't gonna like, I don't do the whole, oh, you get a 50% for like the work that you plagiarized. I never believed in that. And I know the argument is a 50 and a 0 are both still an F, and a 50 just makes it easier for them to end up passing, but I'm someone that doesn't believe in just passing kids on because it makes them feel better. I don't agree with the taboo against repeating grades. I genuinely believe that if a kid hasn't grasped the information and the concepts in this class enough, just passing them on is only gonna put them further behind in the next class. And that's when you have kids that are so lost in class they don't know what's going on, and then it's this mentality of, why am I even going? And then you start seeing kids skip, and I'm not saying that happens all the time, but working in a high school and seeing the kids that just got passed along and then seeing who ended up just stopped coming to class the next year, I noticed. I think it can be really dangerous to just pass kids along because it makes them feel better. I don't see anything wrong with repeating a grade so that they can master the materials to move on to the next class. And before the keyboard warriors come for me, do you know how many zeros a kid really needs to get to fail a class? And I know you're gonna be like, oh, well, a couple tests. Well, if they're not taking the tests, why are you passing them on anyways? If they're not taking all these tests, you don't have the data to say that they'll do well in the next one. Like, I don't get it. And I've been waiting for someone to really give me a reason to change my mind, because I know a lot of people don't agree with me on that. And I would like a better reason as to why I should believe in that. So if you can give me one, definitely let me know in the comments. I just haven't heard a reasoning that I agree with, because I don't see anything wrong with taking a class again. I think that's a good thing. And I'm also someone who saw her brother get held back 1 year and then go to a completely different magnet school and then later skipped a grade, so my brother juggled around between all these peer groups constantly. I don't think this teacher is the bad apple for giving her a 0 for plagiarizing it. Now, what I do hope happens is that she gives the student a chance to make up the assignment, because I've had plenty of kids plagiarize papers, but I always gave them a chance to redo it, and I think that's very fair. But I don't think she's the bad apple for giving the 0 for plagiarism. Now, the counselor on a Saturday, come on, bad apple. Look, we have a visitor. Milo has decided he's gonna join us for today's episode. I don't even remember what I was saying at this point, but I don't think she was the bad apple. I think she was the good apple. I cannot stand when principals are like, oh, well, it looks better for our numbers if they get this grade. No, they didn't earn that. I can't stand that. Apple number 2. Am I the bad apple for holding a student accountable to the rules? I'm an elementary school teacher, and for classroom management, we do behavior cards and behavior logs. If there's no incident, the kids stay on green. One incident is considered a warning and they flip to yellow, and another incident includes a flip to red and a call home, and a final incident flips to purple and includes a meeting with the principal. Recently, a major issue we've had in my classroom is kids interrupting, just blurting things out and talking without raising their hands. I've told my second graders about this problem over and over and over, but they never change their behavior. So one day, I told them we had a new rule. I explained that anyone who talks without raising their hand first would flip straight to red and get a phone call home. One little girl immediately shouted out,
"Oh, Miss Smith! Oops, I'm sorry."
And then proceeds to raise her hand and waited for me to call on her. I knew if I wanted this classroom management to work, I had to put my foot down. I told her, oh, I'm sorry, you already broke the new rule. You're gonna have to flip to red. The girl looked devastated, and she started crying as she moved to flip her card to red in front of the entire class. I did feel bad, but I also felt like I really needed to use her as an example, not just let her slide. Besides, I just explained to her parents what happened, and I thought they would understand. But when I called them, they were really angry at me, and that the student was still crying about the situation, and she couldn't understand why I disliked her. I tried to explain that that wasn't the case, that I was just trying to adhere to the new rules, but her parents weren't having it and said that they were emailing my principal. My principal said she was really disappointed in me, that the girl clearly showed improvement by realizing she needed to raise her hand. But I insisted she still interrupted, and I had just explained the new rules to the kids. If I didn't discipline her, the kids never would have taken me seriously. I really don't think I did anything wrong, but apparently I'm the only one. So, am I the bad apple? What did this girl do to you that you felt like she had to be an example? Like, you could have used her as an example in a positive way, and you chose not to. You could have easily made that up. Oh, Sally, I see you started to interrupt, but you remembered that new rule, and you stopped yourself and raised your hand. Good job. Excellent. You had an opportunity to use her as a good example, as realizing in the middle, oh, I'm doing something wrong, I'm not following the rules, and stopping herself in the middle. That can be really difficult for second graders to do, and she was doing it. Second graders can have problems blurting things out and interrupting. They're still growing, they're still developing, their little minds are just so excited to say things. Sometimes they slip, but this was a girl who stopped herself and realized in the middle, oh, Miss Smith doesn't want me to do that, let me raise my hand. And you pulled the rug out from under her. Yeah, I'm sure your principal is disappointed in you. I'm disappointed in you. You really had a chance to do something sweet and good and use positive reinforcement, and again, you just kind of chose not to. I'm sure that little girl does feel really crummy, and I really hope that you apologize to her. I gotta go with bad apple on this one. I really don't agree with how you went about that. Apple number 3. I, 27 female, have known my sister-in-law for 3 years. She's the type of person that always has to be right and needs to be in charge of everything. She's very demanding as well. My sister-in-law's family members are very disrespectful and rude. They don't clean up after themselves, they expect everyone to act like maids or servants around them, and they think very highly of themselves. And because of this, my sister-in-law's family don't really punish their kids. They seriously have no consequences. They aren't even like the gentle parenting type either, they just have no rules. My sister-in-law's sister has a son and he's extremely chaotic. He always throws tantrums if he doesn't get what he wants, and he always has to be the center of attention 24/7. When there are birthdays, he needs a gift to open himself, or he opens other people's gifts, or he needs to blow out the candles. It's so frustrating, which is why I'm not usually around at family gatherings and other stuff. I was helping my sister-in-law make her wedding invitations because her friend canceled on her. I saw one of the invitations included my sister-in-law's nephew. I asked, "Do you really want him to be at your wedding?" And she said, "Yeah, why would I not?" So I told her why. I talked about his tantrums and how he'll probably throw a fit during the reception and all this other stuff. She got really offended and said that I didn't know what I was talking about. She even told my family and her sister, which caused her sister to write me a message saying how I was wrong and that was rude of me to say about her child. Well, the day of the wedding comes and everyone arrives happy except the nephew. He's crying about this and that and throwing all the temper tantrums you can imagine. When my sister-in-law came walking down the aisle, he literally started screaming. The poor pastor had to stop the ceremony and wait for his parents to escort him out. During the after party, the kid's parents brought him back and again, he was sobbing. He has returned. When they were cutting the cake, he started screaming extremely loud. He even pushed my sister-in-law, who was holding a glass of wine, and it spilled all over her. Then she started crying. She turned around to leave and clean up the wine, and I just looked her in the eye and said, "I told you so." Then she started crying even more. When I got home, my mom called me extremely immature, and she wants me to apologize. What did I even do wrong? Am I the bad apple? Yes. What is wrong with you? Why are you so petty? You literally started this entire thing was, "Oh, she always has to be right. She can never be wrong." And then you're like, "Well, all I did was tell her I told you so." Because I did. I told her so. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Is that a universal saying? Do other people actually know what I mean when I say that? It means you're a hypocrite. You're so mad that she can do no wrong and she always has to be right and blah, 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 blah. You're kicking her while she's down just to prove that you were right. One of the things that you also hate about her. She's clearly having things go wrong at her own wedding. And you have to just, "I was right, he's ruining your wedding." You're making it worse. Yeah, you're being super immature. Why would you ever want to rub it in someone's face that their wedding is being ruined by a family member? Like that's not a, "Yay, I was right about the winning lottery numbers." That's not something to celebrate. And what kind of sister is like, "Oh, I know my son screamed through the entire ceremony and we had to get kicked out, but even though he's still crying, I'm gonna bring him back for the cake cutting." What? What kind of a sister are you? If your kid is actively having a temper tantrum, don't bring him into the wedding. Babysitters exist. Apple number 4. Am I the bad apple for embarrassing my teacher? I'm in high school in a world history class where we're just learning about some of the major world religions. When we got to Judaism, I noticed my teacher was saying things that just weren't correct. And I would know because I'm Jewish. My teacher started talking about Jews worshiping a god named Yahweh. I raised my hand and said, "I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'm Jewish and I've never heard that name in my life. That's just not correct, and the god that Jews worship is the same gods that Christians worship." My teacher actually scoffed at me. He told me I was wrong and that I must not be a very good Jew if I don't know who Yahweh is. I I stood my ground and pressed the subject, asking, where the heck have you heard such a thing? Because that information just isn't right. The teacher said it's in the history textbook, written by people with way more knowledge than me, so he knew who to listen to. I thought maybe I was crazy, so I went home and asked my parents, who the heck is Yahweh? And they had absolutely no idea either. So I went to go ask my rabbi over the weekend, and she giggled. She said that was a very common misconception that Western teachers really misunderstood. I tried to explain this to my teacher, that the textbook was in fact wrong, but he told me that if I tried to correct him again, especially in front of the class, he would write me up. I feel so frustrated. My culture is being taught flat out wrong, but I also don't want to be disrespectful. I just want the correct information to be taught. So, am I the bad apple? I hate things like this. I cannot even begin to tell you how much this frustrates me. First of all, as someone who is also Jewish, yes, the whole Yahweh thing, that's not a thing. Stop teaching your kids that. It's not a thing. Here's what actually it is. For all of you other fellow Jews out there who are just as confused about this, I'll tell you where this thing came from. In the Hebrew language, the name for God is in Hebrew letters Yud-He, Vav-He, and I'll put that on the screen for you guys to visualize. But they don't pronounce it. They don't put vowels with it. Like, they do not say it because the idea is that God's name is so important and above us. Like, we are not worthy of saying his name, so no one does. So then later in history, Westerners are like, oh, Yud-He, Vav-He, what is that? And they're like, oh, it's God. And they're like, oh, well, how do you say that? And they're like, we're not telling you because people don't say it. And they're like, oh, so this must be your God. Cool. And they just kind of guesstimated the vowels that went with the letters. Because fun fact, vowels in Hebrew are different. It's not like vowels in English. It's complicated. We're not going to get into that right now. But pretty much they just guesstimated how to pronounce this name and are like, oh, this must be the Jewish God. It's not. That's not it. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are all three Abrahamic religions who worship the same God. If you're mad about it, I don't know what to tell you. That is what it is. There is no random entity named Yahweh. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. And that's not the only time that history books have been wrong about just history in general. Let me tell you how great some of these history books are, okay? In college, I literally read a textbook that on the entire first page explained how inappropriate it was to call Native Americans Indians, right? Because it's a misconception, like India is over here, the Americas are over here. It's not. And then from the next page on, for the entire rest of the book, called Native Americans Indians. Just because it's in a textbook does not mean that it's factual, okay? I'm telling you, I get you. Good apple, you stand your ground. I've said all I needed to say about it. Okay, so my votes today are 2 good apples and 2 bad apples. Did you get something similar? Did you get something different? I would love to hear what you guys think. Even if you don't agree with me, tell me why. I would love to know. I'd love to hear your reasonings. I might not change my mind, but I like to hear them anyways. If you want to send me your story for a bad apple video, you can do so at the subreddit r/amIthebadapple. In addition, let me know what you guys think about the changes, like my background, the lights. Should I do other colors? What colors do you want me to turn the lights next time? Let me know. As always, like, share, and subscribe. Hit the little bell down at the bottom so that you can be notified of next week's Bad Apple videos. And thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad that you were here, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, my lovelies. Mwah.